Aloha and welcome to episode 1 of the Siren Circle podcast. I'm Alicia Marie and I am so glad that you are here. So I want to start this episode with a question. Have you ever had a moment when you just know something? Like you can't really explain it, you don't have the proof, but somewhere deep inside, you just know that you're supposed to do the thing or go to that place, say yes to the opportunity, and then you don't? Maybe you talked yourself out of it. Maybe someone else convinced you that it was a bad idea. Or maybe you just kept second guessing until that voice got so quiet that you just pretended it was never there. Okay, yeah, we've all done it. Today we're talking about intuition. And more specifically, we're talking about actually listening to it. Because your intuition is always talking. The question is whether or not you're paying attention. I'm going to start off by telling you a story. A time when my intuition was basically screaming at me, and I had to make a choice. Was I going to listen, or was I going to keep playing it safe? So here I was at this point in my life where everything looked okay on the outside. I had stability, I had routine, I had a little bit of safety. It looked good on paper, but I had this feeling, this pull that just would not leave me alone. It kept whispering, you need to go, you need to travel, there is something else out there for you, you are meant for bigger things. And at first I did try to ignore it because honestly it sounded a little bit ridiculous. Like who just picks up and decides to start traveling, to just start over in the middle of the night? What about being responsible? What about having a plan? There were so many logical reasons for me to stay where I was. But the voice did not go away. The more that I tried to push it down, the louder it actually got. So eventually I listened. I said yes to it. And that one decision to trust that pull led me into over a decade of travel. From Maui to Costa Rica, places that I never imagined I would ever see or experience. I connected with thousands of people that I never would have met otherwise. I learned from spiritual practitioners and healers across so many traditions and cultures. I went through some of the most transformative experiences of my life. And it really all started because I trusted that inner knowing, my intuition. Now, I'm not saying that your intuition is going to tell you to become a traveler. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But here's what I know for sure. When you start listening to your intuition, when you actually trust it, your life begins to unfold in ways that you could never fully predict. And that is where the magic lives. So today we are diving into how to recognize that voice, how to tell it apart from fear or worry, or just wanting something to be true, and how to build the courage to follow it, even when it doesn't make logical sense. But before we dive in, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by themagicsiren.com. If you're looking for deeper guidance and clarity, I offer personal tarot readings, both emailed and live sessions. And as a mahalo for being part of the Siren Circle community, use the promo code SIRENSCIRCLE at themagicsiren.com for 10% off any reading. Again, that is Sirens Circle at themagicsiren.com for 10% off any reading. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about what intuition actually is, because I think there's a lot of confusion around this and a lot of mystique that doesn't really need to be there. First thing I want to say, intuition is not some special gift that only certain people have. It is not reserved for psychics or mediums or people who were born with some magical ability. Every single person, including you, has intuition. You have it, I have it, your neighbor has it. It is built into us. Think of intuition as your inner compass. It is that part of you that knows things before your logical mind catches up. It's the wisdom that lives in your body, in your gut, in that quiet space beneath all of the noise. But here's where it gets a little bit tricky because intuition isn't the only voice that's in your head, right? You have anxiety, you got fear, you have wishful thinking, we have trauma responses, we have conditioning from our family, our cultures, our past experiences. All of these voices are talking at once, and sometimes it can feel impossible to figure out which one is actually your intuition. So let's break down the differences. Anxiety is loud. It's frantic, it spirals, it usually sounds like, what if this terrible thing happens? It's rooted in fear of the future, and it is often chaotic in the body. It feels like your heart is racing or your thoughts are spiraling. Fear can sometimes be protective, right? You're walking down a dark alley and you get a feeling that says turn around. That's fear and intuition working together to keep you safe. But fear can also be a learned response. Maybe you're afraid of something because you were told to be afraid of it, not because it actually is dangerous for you. Wishful thinking is when you really, really, really want something to be true, so you convince yourself that it is. It's when you ignore red flags because you're attached to an outcome. Wishful thinking usually has a desperate sort of quality to it. It's like you're trying to force something into place. And then there's intuition. Intuition is calm. It's clear. It doesn't shout. It doesn't panic. It just knows. Intuition feels like truth within your body. It might come as a gut feeling, literally something in your stomach that says yes or no. It might come from a sudden knowing, like information that drops into your awareness and you can't really explain how you know it, you just do. Sometimes it shows up as a physical sensation. Maybe your chest opens when something is right for you, or your body tenses when something feels off. It can come through dreams or through synchronicities that feel just too perfect to be a coincidence. One of the biggest signs of intuition, it's usually quiet and persistent. It doesn't need to convince you, it just is. And it tends to come with a sense of peace, even if what it's telling you might feel uncomfortable or scary. Now, I want to talk about why so many of us have learned to ignore this voice. We live in a world that values logic over feeling. We're taught to think things through, to have proof, to make decisions based on data and logic and reason. And look, logic has its place. I am not telling you to throw your brain out the window, but we've been conditioned to believe that if we can't explain something rationally, it's not real, or worse, it's not trustworthy. A lot of us were also taught to people please, to prioritize what other people think, what other people want, what other people expect. So even when our intuition says no to something, we override it because we do not want to disappoint anyone. We don't want to seem difficult or selfish or even unreasonable. And then there's trauma. Trauma can really mess with our intuition because it keeps our nervous system at a heightened state. When you're stuck in fight or flight, everything feels urgent and dangerous, and it is hard to hear that calm, clear voice underneath all of that. So, if you spent most of your life ignoring your intuition, or if you're sitting here thinking, I don't even know if I have intuition, I want you to know that you do. It's there. It's always been there. You've just been trained not to listen to it. And that is okay because starting today, we are going to change that. So now that we've talked about what intuition is and how to recognize it, let's get real about what gets in the way. Because even when you know your intuition is speaking, are you actually following it? That is a whole nother thing. There are some pretty common blocks that come up for people, and I'm willing to bet at least one of these is going to feel familiar to you. The first one is overthinking. Now, this is a big one. I think a lot of us fall into this category. You get a clear intuitive hit. It's like you know what you're supposed to do, and then your mind kicks in. It starts analyzing, it starts making pros and cons lists, it starts asking but what if, and are you sure, or what's the logical reason for this? And honestly, thinking things through isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when you overthink, you end up talking yourself out of what you already know. You start second guessing, you start looking for external validation, you ask 10 different people for their opinion, hoping that somebody will tell you what to do so you don't have to trust yourself. Overthinking is basically your ego trying to stay in control. Because trusting your intuition means stepping into the unknown, and your logical mind hates the unknown. The next block is people pleasing. This one's kind of sneaky because it disguises itself as being kind or considerate. Your intuition tells you to set a boundary, to say no, to leave a situation, to choose yourself. And then immediately you think about how that's going to affect everybody else, how they're going to feel, what they're going to think of you. So you end up overriding your intuition to keep the peace, to not rock the boat, to be the good person who doesn't cause problems. But the thing about that is when you ignore your intuition to make other people comfortable, you are abandoning yourself. And that has a cost. Then there is the fear of being wrong. This one is huge because if you listen to your intuition and it turns out that you made the wrong choice, what if you look stupid? What if you fail? What if people judge you? What if it goes all wrong? So you end up staying stuck. You don't make the move. You don't take the leap because not choosing feels safer than choosing and being wrong. But let me tell you something. Your intuition isn't about being right in the way that your logical mind thinks about right and wrong. Your intuition is about alignment. It is about what is true for you in that moment, in this moment. And sometimes what's true for you leads you down a path that doesn't look like success from the outside, but it is exactly where you needed to go for your growth. And finally, trauma responses. If you've experienced trauma, and a lot of us have, your nervous system might be stuck in a state of hypervigilance. Everything feels like a potential threat. Everything feels urgent. And when you're in that state, it is really hard to access that calm, clear, intuitive voice. Sometimes what feels like intuition is actually a trauma response. Your body is reacting to something that reminds it of past danger, even if the present moment is safe. This is where healing work becomes really important because the more regulated your nervous system is, the easier it is to hear your intuition clearly. Now, let's talk about what actually costs us when we ignore our intuition. Maybe you've stayed in a relationship longer than you should have because you didn't want to trust that feeling that said, this isn't right. Maybe you took a job that looked really good on paper, but it felt wrong in your gut, and you spent years feeling miserable. Maybe you said yes to things that you didn't want to, and now you're burned out and resentful. When you ignore your intuition, you drift further away from yourself. You start living a life that looks fine from the outside, but doesn't feel like yours. You lose trust in yourself, and over time, that voice gets quieter and quieter because you've trained yourself not to listen to it. But there is good news. You can rebuild that trust. You can start listening again. And the more you do it, the louder and clearer the voice becomes. So I want to give you the permission right now, permission to trust yourself even when it doesn't make logical sense. Permission to honor your knowing even when you can't explain it to other people. Permission to choose yourself, even if it disappoints someone else. Your intuition is not trying to lead you astray, it's trying to lead you home. You know, I want to share something with you. There was a time in my life when I ignored my intuition so consistently that I almost forgot what it felt like to hear it clearly. I was making decisions based on what I thought I should do, what looked good, what made sense to everyone else. And on the surface, my life looked okay. But inside, I really felt disconnected, like I was living someone else's version of my story. And the scary part is I didn't even realize it was happening because when you ignore your intuition for long enough, you really normalize it. You tell yourself, this is just how my life is, or I'm being practical, or I don't have a choice. But we always have a choice. We can always come back to ourselves. For me, it took getting really uncomfortable, staying in situations that were clearly wrong for me until I couldn't ignore it anymore, before I finally started listening again. And I don't want that for any of you, or anyone for that matter. I don't want any of you to have to hit rock bottom or be in abusive situations to give yourself permission to just trust your inner knowing again. So if you're sitting here right now realizing that you've been ignoring your intuition for months, maybe even years, I see you, and I want you to know that it's not too late. That voice is still there. It's been there the whole time, waiting for you to pay attention and to come back home to yourself. And here's something beautiful that happens when you do start honoring your intuition again. The people and the situations that weren't aligned for you start to fall away naturally. You don't have to force endings or make any dramatic exits. Things just change. Because when you're finally living in alignment again, what's not meant for you can't stick around. So give yourself that permission. Start small if you need to, but just start somewhere. All right, so we've talked about what intuition is, what gets in the way of hearing it, and why it matters. Now let's get into some of the practical stuff. How do you actually strengthen your intuition? The thing is, intuition is like a muscle. The more that you use it, the stronger it gets. The more you ignore it, the weaker it becomes. So if you've spent years tuning it out, it's going to take some practice and time to build that connection back up. But you can do it, I promise you can. Let's start with body check-ins. Your body is constantly giving you information. It knows things before your mind does. So one of the simplest ways that you can start tuning into your intuition is to just check in with your body throughout the day. You're going to pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, how does my body feel right now? Are you holding tension anywhere? Is your chest open or is it closed? Is your stomach relaxed or is it tight? Does your body feel expansive or contracted? You can do this when you're making decisions too. Think about something that you're considering, a yes or a no, and notice what happens in your body. Does it open up? Does it relax? Does it get tense? Does it pull back? Your body is always responding to the energy of things before your mind even catches up. So start paying attention to that. The next thing is one of my favorites, meditation and stillness. I know, everybody says meditate is the answer, but there is a reason for that. Intuition speaks in the quiet. It's never going to shout over the noise of your to-do list or your scrolling or your constant mental chatter. You're going to have to sit in silence, maybe for an hour, maybe 5 minutes. Any type of stillness can help. Sit down, close your eyes, breathe, and just listen. Don't try to force anything. Don't expect some sort of big, magical, cosmic download. Just create space for the quiet voice to come through. And if sitting still isn't your thing, you can find stillness in other ways. Walking in nature, being near water, doing something repetitive with your hands. The point is to get out of your thinking mind and into a receptive state. Journaling is also another powerful tool. There's something about putting a pen on paper that just helps you access a deeper knowing within yourself. Try free writing without censoring yourself. Ask your intuition a question and just start writing whatever comes through, whether it's words, doodles, or just lines. Don't judge it. Don't edit it. Just let it flow. Here are a couple of prompts that you can use that I love using at this time. What do I need to know right now? What is my intuition trying to tell me about whatever the situation is? Where in my life am I ignoring what I already know? Sometimes the answers will surprise you. Sometimes they're things that you already knew, but you didn't really want to admit to yourself. But either way, journaling helps you get clear. Now, some tools, we need to talk about tools, tarot, oracle cards, pendulums, things like that. I love these tools because they act as an intuition amplifier. They give your intuition something to speak through. When you pull a tarot card, you're not just getting a random card, you're engaging with your intuition. And the card reflects back what you already know on some sort of level. Same with a pendulum. You're not asking a pendulum to tell you the answer. You're asking your intuition, and the pendulum is just making that inner knowing visible through the pendulum. If you're new to these tools, start simple. Pull a card in the morning, see what comes up for you. Ask a yes or no question with a pendulum. Notice what happens. The more you practice, the more you'll start to trust what comes through. And if there's a tool you want to know more about, let me know in the comments and we can do a deep dive episode on it. Another practice that I love, small bets approach. So this is where you practice your intuition on like a low stakes decision. You're not jumping straight into like, should I quit my job or should I move to another country? You're starting small. Which route should I take to work today? What should I eat for lunch? Should I text this friend or should I wait? Which book should I read next? Make a choice based on your gut feeling and then see what happens. Track it. Notice when your intuition was right and celebrate those wins. Because the more evidence that you collect that your intuition is trustworthy, the easier it becomes to trust it with bigger decisions. Keep a little notebook or even a notes on your phone. I love my notes app. Write down whenever you had an intuitive hit and what happened. Example, I had a feeling I should take the back road, and it turned out there was traffic on the highway. Or I felt drawn to call my friend and it turned out they really needed to talk. These little moments will start to add up and they do build your trust within your intuition again. Creating space for silence is huge. We live in a very noisy world. Notifications, music, podcast, thank you for being here by the way, TV, conversations, constant input. And I love all of that stuff, but your intuition also needs space to speak and breathe. Try taking a walk without your headphones. Sit with your coffee in the morning without immediately reaching for your phone. Drive in silence sometimes, which I know is really difficult. Let yourself be bored. Let your mind wander. Some of my clearest intuitive hits have come when I wasn't trying to figure out anything. They came to me in the shower or when I was on a walk or even just staring out the window because I gave my intuition some room to show up. And finally, learn to sit with uncertainty. This is also a big one because intuition doesn't always give you the full picture up front. Sometimes it literally just says, go this way, without telling you why or where it's leading. And that can feel really uncomfortable if you are someone who likes to have a plan. Part of strengthening your intuition is learning to trust it, even if you don't have all of the answers. It's essentially saying, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to follow it anyway. The more that you practice sitting with that uncertainty, the easier it does get. And the more that you'll realize that your intuition has always been guiding you, even when you couldn't see the full path ahead. So those are some practices. You don't need to do all of them. You could pick one or two that resonate and start there. The key is consistency. The more that you show your intuition that you are listening, the more it will speak up. I actually want to tell you a quick story about something that happened to me when I first started really working with these practices. I was practicing with the small bets approach. I was making those intuitive choices on the little things throughout the day. And one morning, I had a really strong pull to try a new coffee shop. It was not the usual one that I went to. This one was actually a little bit out of the way and inconvenient. My logical mind was saying, this doesn't make sense. Just go to the one you always go to. But I made a commitment to myself that I was going to start listening to my intuition more, even when it did seem random. So I ended up going. I went to this new coffee shop, and I was actually really excited because I drove past it quite frequently when I would go into the city. Anyway, I ended up sitting next to someone who became a really important connection in my life. It was someone who introduced me to a spiritual practice that shifted a lot for me. And it was all because I trusted that random pull to go to a different coffee shop. Now, does every intuitive nudge lead to some life-changing moment? No. Sometimes you follow your intuition and nothing dramatic happens, but that's actually the point. You're building trust. You're showing yourself that it is safe to listen. And here's something I wish somebody had told me when I was first doing this work. You're going to get it wrong sometimes. You're going to follow what you think is intuition, and it's going to turn out to be anxiety or wishful thinking or just not quite right. And that's okay. That's part of the learning process. You are developing discernment. You're getting to know the different voices and feelings within your head and your body. And don't let that fear of misreading your intuition stop you from practicing, because the only way to get better at this is to actually do it, to practice, to mess up, to recalibrate, and to keep going. Think of it like learning a new language. At first, you are going to stumble over the words, you are going to misinterpret so many things, but the more you practice, the more fluent you become. Your intuition is the same way. Your intuition is your second language. So be patient with yourself, celebrate the small wins, notice when you were right and when you weren't. Get curious instead of critical. Ask yourself, what was I actually feeling there, or was I trying to convince myself of something? It's all information. It is all helping you strengthen that connection. So we've talked about what intuition is, what blocks it, and how to strengthen it. Now let's talk about what it actually looks like to use your intuition in real life, because this is where it can get confusing and complicated, messy, but also very beautiful. So let's start with relationships. I think this is one of the areas where intuition is so important, and it's also one of the areas where we ignore it the most. Maybe you meet someone and right away you get this feeling, this person is important. Or maybe it's the opposite. You see some red flags. You meet someone and something just feels off, but you can't put your finger on why. They seem nice. They're saying all the right things, but your gut is saying, this might be too good to be true. Your intuition picks up on energy that your logical mind doesn't catch. It will notice subtle things, the way that somebody makes you feel, the way that your body responds when you're around them, the vibe. And that's the thing, when your intuition is telling you something about a person and you ignore it because you don't want to seem judgmental or because you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, you are often setting yourself up for pain down the road. I'm not saying to write people off without giving them a chance. I'm a huge believer in giving a chance, but I am saying trust what you feel. If something feels off, it probably is. If something feels right, pay attention to that too. The universe will show true colors. Now, within our career and our life path, decisions are also another big one. Your intuition might tell you to leave a job that looks great on paper. It might tell you to take a risk that doesn't make financial sense. Maybe it might tell you to pivot in a completely different direction than you planned. This is where it can get really hard, right? Because there is so much external pressure. There are things that we are supposed to do, things that are practical. There's what other people think that you should do. But your intuition knows what's aligned for you. It knows what is going to light you up, what is going to drain you, what's going to lead you towards your purpose. And sometimes that means making a choice that other people don't understand. When I felt that pull to travel, it did not make sense to like anyone, but I knew and I had to trust that knowing even when I couldn't justify it logically was the right decision for me. Your spiritual path is another area where intuition is everything. Maybe your intuition is telling you to explore a practice that feels outside of your comfort zone. Maybe you're drawn to a teacher and you don't know why. Maybe you're being called to let go of beliefs that no longer serve you, even if they've been part of your identity since childhood or just for a really long time. Your spiritual journey is deeply personal, and your intuition is the guide. Not what works for someone else, not what's trendy, not what you think you're supposed to believe, what feels true for you. Now, I do want to talk about something that comes up a lot. What do you do when your intuition is telling you one thing, but everyone around you is saying something different? This is a tough spot because we are social creatures. We want support. We do want validation. And when the people we love are questioning our choices, it does shake things up for us. But here's what I've learned. Other people are giving you advice based on their fears, their limitations, their worldview. They are not living your life and they don't have access to your inner knowing. So when someone tells you that's not realistic, or you're making a mistake, or are you sure about this? Pause. Check in with yourself. Does their perspective resonate? Or is it just triggering your own doubts? Sometimes people will push back on your intuitive choices because those choices make them uncomfortable. Maybe you're doing something that they wish that they had the courage to do. Maybe your growth is highlighting where they're stuck. That is not your responsibility. You can listen to other people's perspectives, of course. You can take in information, but at the end of the day, you are the only one who has to live with your choices. So trust yourself. And then there is the timing piece. Sometimes your intuition will tell you something, but the timing isn't right yet. You'll know that you're supposed to do the thing, but not now. And that could be frustrating because you want to act on it immediately. Learning to trust the timing of your intuition is part of the practice. Sometimes the knowing comes first and the action comes later. Sometimes you're being prepared for something before it's time to move on. Pay attention to when things feel like they're flowing versus when they feel forced. Your intuition will guide you on timing as well. Here's the truth. Following your intuition doesn't mean everything will be easy. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes or have moments of doubt. And it doesn't mean that everyone will understand or support you. But it does mean that you'll be living in alignment. It means that you'll be choosing yourself. It means that you'll be on a path that's actually yours and not someone else's version of what your life should look like. And that is everything. You know, there have been times when I followed my intuition and people I loved did not understand. They thought that I was being reckless or impulsive or that I wasn't thinking things through, and maybe sometimes I wasn't. But there were those moments of doubt that got into my head when I started second guessing myself, when I wondered if maybe they were right and I was wrong. But here is what I learned. When you are living intuitively, you are going to feel alone sometimes, not because you are alone, but because most people aren't making decisions this way. Most people are playing it safe, following the rules, or doing what's expected of them. And when you step outside of that, it will trigger something in those people around you. Sometimes it's fear for you. Sometimes it's their own regret about choices that they didn't make. Sometimes it's just that they genuinely don't understand because they're not tapped into their own intuition. And maybe they should listen to this podcast. But you cannot live your life trying to make sense to everyone else. You just can't. There's also this thing that happens when you really start trusting your intuition. You become more sensitive to when things are out of alignment. Like if things that you used to be able to tolerate, you just can't tolerate them anymore. Relationships that used to feel fine, they start to feel heavy. Environments that were just like okay before, they really start to drain you. It's not a bad thing. I mean, it can feel a little bit scary, but that's your intuition getting stronger. That is you becoming more attuned to what is true for you. But yes, it can be uncomfortable because it often means that you are outgrowing things faster than maybe you're ready to let them go. If that's happening for you right now, I just want to acknowledge it is hard. Growth is hard. Growth is uncomfortable. Choosing yourself is hard, but you're not doing anything wrong. You are just becoming more of who you truly are. And one more thing that I would like to say about intuition in action. Sometimes your intuition will lead you somewhere that doesn't look like success by conventional standards. Sometimes it'll lead you through a challenging experience, a painful ending, or even a humbling lesson. And from the outside, people might look at your life and think, well, that didn't work out. But you know differently because you'll know what you've learned. You'll know how you grew. You'll know that things were exactly where you needed to be and how it was meant to unfold. So trust the path even when it doesn't look like you thought it would. So now that we've talked a little bit about intuition and action, I want to go a little bit deeper because intuition isn't just one isolated skill. It is actually the foundation for so much more of the spiritual work that we do, and understanding how intuition connects to other practices can really strengthen your relationship with it. So let's start with shadow work. Your intuition knows what you are avoiding. It knows the parts of yourself that you don't want to look at, the patterns that keep repeating, the wounds that still need healing. You know that feeling that you keep attracting the same type of person or situation over and over into your life? Your intuition has been trying to show you something. It is saying there is something here that you need to see. Shadow work is about going into those uncomfortable places and meeting the parts of yourself that you've rejected or hidden. And your intuition is going to guide that. It says, look here, or this is what needs your attention right now. Sometimes your intuition will give you a gut feeling about why you're really upset about something, and it won't be the surface reason. It'll be something deeper, like a trigger pointing at an old wound, a reaction where you haven't really healed yet. The more that you listen to your intuition within your shadow work, the faster you move through it, because your intuition isn't going to lie to you. It doesn't just let you stay in denial, it shows you the truth, even when it's hard. Now let's talk a little bit about manifestation, because here's what a lot of people get wrong. They think that manifestation is just about visualizing what you want and then waiting for it to show up. But real manifestation requires aligned action. And how do you know what aligned action is? Intuition. Your intuition guides you towards opportunities, the people, the paths that are in alignment with what you're calling in. It is that voice that says, reach out to that person, or apply for that thing, or say yes to this, even though it might seem really random. Manifestation without intuition is really just wishful thinking. When you combine your vision with intuitive guidance, that's where things really start moving and growing. Your intuition also tells you when you are trying to force something that is not meant for you, when you're pushing too hard, when you are attracted to a specific outcome instead of staying open to what wants to come through. So if you're someone who's working on manifestation, start paying attention to your intuitive nudges. They are showing you the way forward. And astrology. Okay, this is a big one for me. I have been diving so deep into the astrology rabbit hole lately, and we're going to be diving deep into astrology in future episodes. But here's how it connects to intuition. Your natal chart is like a map of your soul's blueprint. It shows you all of your gifts, your challenges, your purpose, the lessons that you're here to learn, and your intuition is how you access all of that wisdom. You might look at your chart and see that you have strong Neptune placement, which can indicate psychic sensitivity or a connection to the mystical. Or maybe you have a lot of water placements, which means that you feel everything deeply and your intuition comes through emotionally. But even beyond your birth chart, astrology can give you information about the energy that's available right now. The transits, the retrogrades, the moon phases, and your intuition helps you interpret how that energy is showing up in your life specifically. Like Mercury retrograde might be happening for everyone, but your intuition tells you what it means for you, what needs to maybe be revisited, what communications need to happen, what's being revealed to you. Astrology is kind of like the language, and intuition is how you read it for yourself. And finally, let's talk about spiritual gifts, because whether you're a healer, a reader, an empath, a channel, whatever your gifts are, intuition is going to be your foundation. If you read tarot, you're using your intuition to interpret energies of the cards. If you do energy healing, you're using your intuition to sense where blocks are. If you're an empath, your intuition helps you discern what's yours and what's someone else's. Your spiritual gifts are amplified when your intuition is strong. And honestly, everyone has spiritual gifts. They just might not look like what you think they should. Maybe your gift is knowing exactly what to say to someone when they need it. Maybe sensing the energy of a room. Maybe your gift is dreaming about things before they happen, or maybe it's just having a really strong gut instinct about people. All of that is intuition working through you. Again, the more you honor it, the more your gifts continue to develop. So whether you're doing shadow work, manifesting, working with astrology, or developing your spiritual gifts, intuition is the foundation. It's what connects you to your truth and guides you forward. And that is why strengthening your intuition isn't just about making better decisions. It's about stepping fully into your spiritual path and trusting that you have everything you need within you. When I first started really taking my spiritual journey seriously, I was looking for answers everywhere outside of myself. I wanted teachers and mentors to kind of tell me what to do. I wanted books to give me the exact steps. I wanted my astrology chart to lay out my whole life path in black and white. And all of those things were helpful. I mean, they really were. But what I eventually realized was that none of it really meant anything if I wasn't also listening to my own inner guidance. The whole point of our spiritual journey is to become our own spiritual guide. I could read every book on manifestation, but if I wasn't tuning into my intuition about what I actually wanted to create, I was just manifesting someone else's version of success. I could study my birth chart for hours, but if I wasn't using my intuition to feel into how those energies were showing up for me, it was just information on the page. Your intuition is what makes all of this work on a personal level. It's what makes it yours. So here's something really beautiful. The more you develop your intuition, the more all of these spiritual practices really start to click. Like suddenly tarot makes way more sense because you're not just memorizing those very important meanings, you're also feeling what the cards are telling you. Shadow work becomes less scary because your intuition is gently guiding you into where you're ready to heal and what you're ready to release. Manifestation becomes more aligned because you're not forcing it, you're following it. It all starts to work together. This is why I wanted to spend some time connecting these dots in this episode, because intuition isn't separate from your spiritual path. It is your spiritual path. Everything else is just tools and frameworks to help you access what you already know. So if you've been studying astrology, working with tarot, maybe doing your shadow work or trying to manifest, and it feels like something is missing, this might be it. Your intuition is the missing piece. It is the thread that weaves it all together. And the good news is you don't have to start over, you just have to start listening. All right, so let's bring all of this together. Your intuition is always speaking. That's the calm, clear inner knowing that lives beneath all the noise. And the more you practice listening to it through your body check-ins, stillness, journaling, using tools, making those small bets, the stronger that connection becomes. Yes, the blocks are going to come up. Overthinking, people-pleasing, fear of being wrong, they're all part of the process. But when you start to recognize them, you can move through them instead of letting them stop you. And when you actually follow your intuition, when you trust it, even when it doesn't make sense, that's when your life starts to unfold in ways you couldn't have planned, and that's where the magic and the spiritual growth happens. So, I have a challenge for you this week. I want you to pick one practice we talked about today and commit to it. Maybe it's doing a daily body check-in, maybe it's pulling a tarot card each morning, maybe it's journaling on one of those prompts, maybe it's just practicing with small decisions and tracking when your intuition was right. Start somewhere, start small, just start listening, and pay attention. Notice what comes through. Notice when you override your intuition and what happens. Notice when you trust it and what unfolds. Your intuition is a gift. It is your inner compass, and as you honor it, the more it will guide you home to yourself. All right, next week, we are diving into something wonderful. Mercury retrograde here in Pisces season. It's everybody's favorite time. And listen, I know Mercury retrograde gets a bad rap. Everybody's freaking out about their technology breaking, their exes coming back, all the chaos. But there is so much more to it than that. We're going to talk about the actual energy of this retrograde, what it means that it's happening in Pisces specifically, the other planetary movements that are going on at the same time, and how they're all working together. And we're going to debunk some of those myths because Mercury retrograde isn't just about things going wrong. It's also an invitation, and I'm going to tell you what it's inviting you into. So make sure you're subscribed. Don't miss that episode. It's going to be a good one. I'm excited. And thank you so much for being here in the Siren Circle, this very first episode I am beyond grateful that you are on this journey with me. And until next week, trust yourself, listen to that inner voice, and stay magical. Aloha, mahalo, and let me know if you enjoyed this episode in the comments below. I'll see you then.